El grupo articulatorio. ¿Qué es un grupo articulatorio? The way that's said in English is breath group. So in English, a breath group. En español, el grupo articulatorio. Pero, ¿qué es un grupo articulatorio? Cuando leemos, hay divisiones entre palabras. You've been reading for many, many years now. When you read, you see words as separate entities. So cuando, obviously, is separated from leemos, and then I is separated from divisiones, and the same goes throughout the sentence. When we read, we see words as separate. Pero cuando hablamos, no hay divisiones. When we speak, we don't have these divisions. If we did have these divisions when we speak, then I would read the sentence above like this. Cuando leemos, hay divisiones entre palabras. And of course, no one talks that way. So even though you see words separated in a sentence, when you say it, and this is true in all languages, when you say that out loud, everything flows together in one group of sound. The beginning, a slash, at the end, a slash. So you've been using slashes, and now to be a little bit more accurate, what you're doing with the slashes is you are framing un grupo articulatorio. Entonces, la definición es todo el sonido que ocurre entre pausas. So you've got your slashes that are going to represent all the sound that happens between pauses for a speaker. Muchas veces, la puntuación nos ayuda. In other words, if you have a period, you're going to have a separate breath group. If you have a comma, sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. So when we're talking about speaking, we don't have to deal with punctuation rules when we're speaking. When you are transcribing something in the International Phonetic Alphabet, you're not transcribing words, you're transcribing sounds. So how do you know how to divide them? Again, sometimes the punctuation helps, pero la división correcta es la división que hace la persona que habla. So going back to that top sentence starting with cuando, if the person who's speaking reads it this way, cuando leemos, hay divisiones entre palabras. Then that would have been broken up into 3 separate breath groups. So when I said cuando leemos, and then I made a pause, all of that would be together between slashes. Then you'd start a new grupo articulatorio, again framed with slashes, that would be hay divisiones. And then finally, a third group would be entre palabras. So the real answer to how you divide them up into breath groups, it just depends on the reality of what was spoken. So again, all the sounds that occur between pauses. Usually we pause at the end of sentences, but sometimes we pause in the middle, sometimes because of punctuation, sometimes because we forget what we're saying for a moment and we just stop. But however you want to think about it, when you're deciding what all goes in un grupo articulatorio, just sort of say out loud what it is you're trying to decide between, and whatever you think is natural to put between those slashes, whatever you think is natural to put between pauses, that is your grupo articulatorio. El silabeo. Esta información viene del capítulo 6 de Dalborg. El silabeo es la división de palabras en sílabas separadas. Now, I'm the first one to admit that even as a linguist, the information in chapter 6 of Dalborg is pretty dense. It's very technical, and it's just loaded with information. So it's very possible that it won't all make sense to you the first time you read it. Don't worry about that. Read it once, twice, understand it as best you can, but rest assured that we will always go over the most important things in Espanol and in English, and you will have plenty of opportunities to put into practice what this chapter talks about. So, silabeo es la división de palabras en sílabas separadas. Hay dos tipos de sílabas. Hay sílabas abiertas y sílabas cerradas. Una sílaba abierta es una sílaba que termina en vocal. Y vocal, en español hay 5. A, E, I, O, U son las vocales. Entonces, una sílaba abierta termina en vocal, A, E, I, O, U. Una sílaba cerrada termina en consonante. Con la frase la casa tiene ventanas grandes, I've said that all together in one breath group, so all of that is happening between slashes. La casa tiene ventanas grandes, as if it were one long word. All the syllables in green, sílabas de verde, terminan en vocal, la, ca, sa, tie, ne, and then over to ta. Todas estas sílabas terminan en vocal. But the ones in purple, ven, nas, grandes, terminan en consonante. Entonces son sílabas cerradas. Una cosa interesante es que la estructura silábica preferida del español es la sílaba abierta. So what I'm saying here is that the preferred syllabic structure in Spanish, the structure that Spanish just really seems to prefer, is the open syllable, la sílaba abierta. More often than not, Spanish syllables are going to end in a vowel, not a consonant. If you've ever thought to yourself that Spanish is spoken very quickly, that may or may not be the case. In any language, some people speak quickly, some people don't. What happens many times in Spanish is you hear this whole string of sound coming at you. And if you're not sure where to divide the words, it all just comes in as one mush. The thing about the open syllables, las sílabas abiertas, is when they end in a vowel, they have a tendency to just sort of sound like they hook up with the next consonant. So everything just sort of glides forward, almost into a rhythm. It seems like words flow together. There's an actual scientific reason for that. In Spanish, if you have so many open syllables, the ones that end in vowels, they have a tendency to sort of string together in this sing-songy way, so it all sounds like one word. There are closed syllables in Spanish. You see the examples there. But more often than not, las sílabas en español son sílabas abiertas. Hay unas reglas que usamos para dividir palabras en sílabas en español. I don't know if you remember being a kid and learning about syllable division as you were learning your mother tongue, English. You might have even did little clapping exercises as you were dividing up the syllables. El problema es que las reglas en español son un poco diferentes que las reglas en inglés. So things that might seem intuitive, natural to you as an English speaker, which is most of you, that may not transfer to Spanish. So these rules really need to be just memorized rather than you relying on your own instincts of how to divide up a word. Empezamos con una regla general, la regla más importante. Es que si un grupo de consonantes no puede empezar una palabra, no puede empezar una sílaba. I spoke about this example before, but it works here as well. In English, we can start a word with the consonant combination, and again sounds, not letters, of s and k. So we can say school in Spanish because we can begin a word with the combination of the sounds s and k. So if that can begin a word in English, then that can also begin a syllable. Pero en español es diferente. We can't start any word, and therefore can't start any syllable, with the consonant combination of sk. If we were able to do that in Spanish, as I said before, school would be escuela. And it isn't escuela simply because of these rules in Spanish. In Spanish, you cannot begin a word with the sound combination of the consonants s and k. So if you can't start a word with it, you can't start a syllable with it. So this is kind of an overlying rule that will apply in many cases. Okay, unas reglas individuas. Regla número uno. And there's a reason I have a caution sign here. I have a caution sign here because for whatever reason, this is the most difficult one for English speakers, which is most of you, to grasp or to actually put into practice. I've been teaching this class for over 2 decades, and for whatever reason, this is the one that gives people the most problems. So I want you to really, really memorize this one and really put it into practice. So una consonante, and again, sonido, not a letter of the alphabet, ocurre entre dos vocales. Esta consonante empieza la próxima sílaba. So if you have a consonant sound that occurs between two vowel sounds, that consonant sound is going to get kicked up to the next syllable. Con la frase, con estos abuelos argentinos, I'm going to put all of this between slashes because, as you'll notice, I didn't say con estos abuelos argentinos. I said it as if it were all one word, con estos abuelos argentinos. But we're going to divide it up into syllables. So here, between con and estos, you have a vowel, you have a consonant, the N, that occurs between two vowel sounds, the O and the E. So just because of this rule, this consonant has to go forward to the next syllable. So you see what's happening here is what is the division of a word in letters, the con. The sounds that go with that word con are not going to stay together in the same syllable. Why? Just because of this rule. Because you have a consonant sound, N, that happens between two vowel sounds, O and E, so it's going to start the next syllable. The same thing here with the S in con estos abuelos. So you're taking the S from estos, the word, and you're kicking it forward to the syllable that starts abuelos. Why? Again, simply because of this rule. You have a consonant sound that occurs between two vowel sounds. So that consonant starts the next syllable. The same thing with B in abuelos. And then the L occurs between the E and the O, so it starts the next syllable. The S occurs between the O and the A, so it starts the next syllable. And the same thing with the N in tinos. It occurs between the E and the O sound, so it goes to the next syllable. So what you'll notice here is when you're dividing a breath group up into syllables, those syllable divisions do not always match the divisions of the words when you read them visually. We have a couple of combinations here too to think about, but that will come in the next slide. Okay, regla número 2. Una combinación de consonantes, dos consonantes, o tres, o cuatro, una combinación de consonantes que puede empezar una palabra, necesita empezar una sílaba nueva. La palabra agradable. So here we have a group, a combination of consonant sounds. You have the g and the So you ask yourself, do these two consonant sounds that occur right beside each other, do they belong together in a syllable or do you have to divide them? How do you know? Well, we go back to that, if it can begin a word, it can begin a syllable. Can you think of a Spanish word that begins with the sounds g, r? Think about that for a moment. One possible answer would be grasa or grueso, or even much more common, gracias. So yes, you can start a word in Spanish with the sound combination of gr. If you can do that, then they have to stay together. So that's why they go together to the next syllable, gra. Same thing with B and L together, or the sounds ble. Can you think of a word in Spanish that starts with the sound combination ble? You might have thought of the color, blanco. So yes, if it can start a word, then it can start a syllable. And not only can it start a syllable, it has to start a syllable. So the GRs stay together and the BLs stay together because those sound combinations can begin a word. Perla grande. With this example, you have two consonants together, the R and the L from perla. Can you start a Spanish word with the sound combination of a R and a L? Of course not. Same thing with the nd. Can you start a word in Spanish with nd? You can hardly even try to do it. So since those combinations of consonants, the RL, again, sounds, and the ND, the nd, since you can't start a word with them, then you have to separate them. So the R in perla stays back with the first syllable, while the L starts the next syllable. The same with grande. They can't stay friends. They can't hang out because they can't start a word. They can't start a syllable. So you divide them. The N stays back and the D starts the next syllable. So again, una combinación de consonantes que puede empezar una palabra necesita empezar una sílaba nueva. Regla número 3 es muy similar, pero hablamos de tres consonantes. Tres consonantes juntas. Si hay tres consonantes, se divide como regla número 1. Entonces, la combinación de consonantes que puede empezar una palabra o sílaba se quedan juntas. Ejemplos. Hombre con transporte. So here you have 3 consonant sounds in a row, the and the b and the r. Well, you obviously can't keep them all together. So you're going to have to divide them up into 2 and 1, or 1 and 2. How do you decide? Well, start with the MB together. Can you start a word in Spanish with those? Absolutely not. So you put the division between the M and the BR. And we know that you can start a word in Spanish with BR, like brisa or brazo. But the reason we're dividing them is you have to ask which of those two, like what pair can begin a word. You can't do it with MB, but you can do it with BR. So BR together, as friends, start the next syllable, whereas M hangs back. Same thing here with con transporte. You have the sound N and T and R that all occur together. You clearly can't start any word or syllable in Spanish with an NT sound combination. But you can start a word with a TR sound combination, like the word transporte or trigo. So since you can start a word or a syllable with the TR combination, then they stay friends and they stay together in the next syllable, whereas the N had to stay back. Same thing with transporte. Can't do it with NS, and you can't do it with P. So this is a little bit different. These two being together, the N and the S, we're not saying that you can start something with them. What I'm saying is there any combination here that can go together? There isn't. You can't start with NS. You also can't start with SP. Can you start something with just a P? Well, obviously. Pueblo, paso, pisa. So since this P all by itself could begin a word or a syllable, then it starts the next syllable, and the other two are left back, the N and the S. RT. You can't do anything with RT together, so you split them up. And just to, that's really just an example of the two together. So more important are the other ones that I have illustrated here. So that MBR gets divided between the M and the BR. And here the NTR get divided between the N and the TR. And then the combination of NSP, there's no combination of two of those sounds that can start a word. NS can't do it, SP can't do it, but P by itself can. So since it can start a word like pueblo, paso, pisa, then it has to start the next syllable. So that's what happens when you have tres consonantes. You figure out which ones can hang out and which ones can't. Regla número 4 es más fácil. Si hay 4 consonantes, fácil, se divide en 2 y 2. Obstrucción. No hay muchas palabras en español que tienen una combinación de 4 consonantes, sonidos de consonantes juntos, estos sonidos. So here is one example. There aren't many. You've got a B and a S and a T and a R. But since there are 4 consonant sounds in a row, you don't even have to think about how to divide them. You divide them into 2 and 2. So you keep BS together and you keep TR together. You've simply divided the 4 consonant sounds right down the middle. Obs, and then truc and sion. Otro ejemplo, transplantar. Tenemos N, S, P, U, 4 sonidos de consonantes. Entonces se divide en 2 y 2. NS y luego en la próxima sílaba PL. Okay, Ahora hablamos de un concepto de diptongos y hay dos reglas que usamos con diptongos. ¿Pero qué es un diptongo? Pues un diptongo es una combinación de dos vocales en la misma sílaba. I want to be crystal clear about something. When you have a diphthong, what you're saying is there's two vowel sounds that sort of combine together to make a new sound, and they stay together in the same syllable. But this doesn't refer to just any combination of vowels. Only certain combinations of vowels can form a diphthong. Dos situaciones. Situación número uno, cuando tenemos una vocal fuerte y una vocal débil. Pero, ¿qué es vocal fuerte y vocal débil? Pues una vocal fuerte tenemos tres en español, A, E, O. No sé por qué, pero son vocales fuertes. Y vocales débiles solamente hay dos, I, U. Entonces, una situación de diptongo es cuando tenemos una vocal fuerte y una vocal débil. O la segunda situación es cuando tenemos dos vocales débiles. Sabemos ahora que una vocal débil solamente hay dos en español, I, U. Entonces, cuando tenemos las dos vocales débiles, pero el orden no importa. Entonces, I, U o U, I. Entonces, en situación número uno o situación número dos, si tenemos estas condiciones, entonces necesariamente tenemos un diptongo, que es una combinación de sonidos de vocales en la misma sílaba. Aquí, 7 ciudades. En la palabra 7 tenemos dos vocales. Entonces la pregunta es, ¿tenemos una combinación de una vocal fuerte y una vocal débil o dos vocales débiles? I, E. ¿Ok? I, una vocal débil. E, una vocal fuerte. Entonces sí, tenemos las condiciones aquí para formar un diptongo. Entonces, Y, estos dos sonidos I, E, forman un diptongo en la misma sílaba. So you're not going to divide up the E and the E. This letter I and letter E, just to be clear. You can hear them both in the same syllable. You can hear them. It's not just like an I and it's not just like an E, but they don't make separate syllables. So it's just sie. So try that. Sie. Sie. The next situation, ciudades. En el alfabeto fonético internacional tenemos I, U aquí, después de S. Y aquí tenemos dos vocales débiles. I, U. I, U. Entonces, necesariamente forman un diptongo, parte de la misma sílaba. Entonces, siu, I, U, en la misma sílaba. Aunque tiene miedo, A, U, estos sonidos que empiezan la palabra aunque, ¿tenemos una condición para formar un diptongo? A, U, sí. A, una vocal fuerte, U, una vocal débil. Entonces, cuando tenemos estas condiciones, hay que formar un diptongo en la misma sílaba, aún. La combinación de I, E en tiene, y en miedo, tiene, tenemos una vocal débil, I, y una vocal fuerte, E, entonces forman un diptongo. Ok, selección de guantes antiguos. Selección de guantes antiguos. I, O, selección. I, vocal débil, O, vocal fuerte, sí, es un diptongo. Lo mismo con guan, vocal débil, vocal fuerte, guan, un diptongo en la misma sílaba. Y finalmente, U, O, antiguos. Entonces, la pronunciación correcta de esta palabra no es antiguos. Antiguos, es antiguos, porque U, O forman un diptongo en la misma sílaba. And when I'm talking about the same syllable, I'm not talking only about how you're writing the phonetic translation, which is our concentration now, but also when you pronounce it. Una cosa importante, and I don't think I've said this yet, es que cada sílaba necesita por lo menos una vocal. So I just want to file it away in your head that every syllable has to have at least one vowel. There's no way to have a syllable that doesn't have at least one vowel in it. That will be a little bit more important in a while. So regla número 5A es la formación de diptongos. But there's a catch. Regla 5B. Now this one's really tricky, so just for now, I'm going to say this in English. If you have an I or U, only those two possibilities, an I or U, or more appropriately in Spanish sound, I, U. If you have one of those, and its written letter has an accent mark over it, then that accent mark gives that weak vowel, notice that the E and the U are both weak vowels. If it has an accent mark over it, it gives it its own force. It gives it more strength to stand by itself. So it doesn't stay in a diphthong. It gets its own force, its own power to start a new syllable. But again, solamente I, U. So if your sounds I, U in the written form have an accent mark, solamente I, U, entonces no forman un diptongo, empiezan la próxima sílaba. Okay, so here, if you have the word L-E-I, the letters L-E-I, o en español E-L-E-I, in writing, there is an accent mark over the I. Now, if there weren't an accent mark over the I, could you have the conditions met for a diphthong? Well, the E sound is a strong vowel. The E sound is a weak vowel. So we have a strong and a weak vowel together. That should form a diphthong. That's what we just said. But if that were true, then this word would be pronounced le in una sílaba, le. And we know it's not le, it's lei. And how can that be two different syllables is because the I, which is a weak vowel, it has an accent mark, so it gathers its own strength enough to start its own syllable. So we've got lei. Otros ejemplos. Aún. Without that written accent mark over the U, we would have the criteria met for a diphthong. The A is a strong vowel. The U is a weak vowel. If there were no accent mark, it would be aún. One syllable, aún. But we don't want aún. We want aún. So with that written accent mark in the letter, that translates to the U sound, the U, having its own power to start a new syllable. So the AU do not stay together. Okay, Tío Raúl. The I has an accent mark, the U has an accent mark, so they are going to start their own new syllable. What if there weren't written accent marks? If there weren't, this would be mi tío Raúl. So try to say tío in one syllable. Just try it. Tío, tío, tío. Sounds stupid because we don't want tío, we want tío. So in writing, we accent the I. In the phonetic transcription, we can separate the I and the O. It has its own strength to stand by itself, and T, and then the O begins a new syllable. Same thing with Raúl. If there were no accent over the U, you'd pronounce it Raúl, which is hard to even say. Try that. Raúl. We know it's Raúl. So in writing, the U gets an accent mark. In the phonetic transcription, the U has its own power to start a new syllable. So a little bit of a difference here with the I and the O. It's the I that has an accent mark. It doesn't start the next syllable, but you can see it has enough force to stand on its own. Same thing here, the U can stand on its own, but it's starting the next syllable. Okay, 6 días. E-I, E-I, A. We have a strong vowel, A, and a weak vowel together. So that's a criteria for forming a diphthong. Do we have an accent mark over the I? We do not. So since the I doesn't have an accent mark to give it its own power, its own strength, then it stays together as a diphthong, just like you learned in the previous slide. So this is just one syllable, 6. But in the next word, the I and the A go together. That should be a diphthong. The I is a weak vowel, the A is a strong vowel, but we don't want to say días. Try that one, that one's fun. Say it in one syllable, días. that's ridiculous. We want días. So in order to be able to divide the I from the A, we give it its own syllable. In writing, we give it the accent mark. Agua fría. In agua, the UA, they form a diphthong because you've got a weak vowel and a strong vowel right there. Weak vowel U, strong vowel A. Fría, you also have a weak vowel, E, and a strong vowel, but you don't want them to be a diphthong. So in order to break up that diphthong, in writing you do it with an accent mark. In Spanish, you do it by separating the two vowels into separate syllables. So you've got free, separate from A. So agua is only two syllables, agua, and fría is two syllables, fría. Ok, practicamos. Quiero que ustedes escriban estas divisiones de palabras y de frases en tus notas. So using everything we've talked about, I want you to use the International Phonetic Alphabet, el Alfabeto Fonético Internacional. Use those symbols to represent the sounds that these words make, and also not only use your IPA symbols, but also divide it correctly into syllables. Now, on the left-hand side, you have just one word at a time. On the right-hand side, the first 4 are one word, but after that, you have 2 words, or 3 words even. But in these cases, you're going to consider them as one breath group, because you're not going to say for quince, aire limpio. If you were speaking normally in a sentence, it would come out aire limpio. So for each of these 20, be it a single word or a phrase, consider them all one breath group. So comunidad is one breath group, and Mexico is one breath group. But then over to 16 votos iniciales is together as one breath group. So write down your answers in your notes, doing your very best to not look at the next slide until you're done. Keep in mind your syllable division rules. Keep in mind that there are no capital letters within the phonetic alphabet, and there are also no written accent marks in the phonetic alphabet. So do your best. Write the answers in your notes. You're using the International Phonetic Alphabet symbols and dividing into syllables, and then check your answers en la próxima diapositiva. Regla 5B. Now this one's really tricky, so just for now, I'm going to say this in English. If you have an I or U, only those 2 possibilities, an I or U, or more appropriately in Spanish sound, I, U. If you have one of those, and its written letter has an accent mark over it, then that accent mark gives that weak vowel, notice that the E and the U are both weak vowels. If it has an accent mark over it, it gives it its own force. It gives it more strength to stand by itself. So it doesn't stay in a diphthong. It gets its own force, its own power to start a new syllable. But again, solamente I, U. So if your sounds I, U in the written form have an accent mark, solamente I, U, entonces no forman un diptongo, empiezan la próxima sílaba. Okay, so here, if you have the word L-E-I, the letters L-E-I, o en español E-L-E-I, in writing, there is an accent mark over the I. Now, if there weren't an accent mark over the I, could you have the conditions met for a diphthong? Well, the E sound is a strong vowel. The I sound is a weak vowel. So we have a strong and a weak vowel together. That should form a diphthong. That's what we just said. But if that were true, then this word would be pronounced ley, in una sílaba, ley. And we know it's not ley, it's lei. And how can that be 2 different syllables is because the I, which is a weak vowel, it has an accent mark, so it gathers its own strength enough to start its own syllable. So we've got lei. Otros ejemplos. Aún. Without that written accent mark over the U, we would have the criteria met for a diphthong. The A is a strong vowel. The U is a weak vowel. If there were no accent mark, it would be aun. One syllable, aun. But we don't want aun, we want aun. So with that written accent mark in the letter, that translates to the U sound, the U, having its own power to start a new syllable. So the AU do not stay together. Okay, Tío Raúl. The I has an accent mark, the U has an accent mark, so they are going to start their own new syllable. What if there weren't written accent marks? If there weren't, this would be mi tío Raúl. So try to say tío in one syllable. Just try it. Tío, tío, tío. Sounds stupid because we don't want tío, we want tío. So in writing, we accent the I. In the phonetic transcription, we can separate the I and the O. It has its own strength to stand by itself, and T, and then the O begins a new syllable. Same thing with Raúl. If there were no accent over the U, you'd pronounce it Raúl, which is hard to even say. Try that. Raúl. We know it's Raúl. So in writing, the U gets an accent mark. In the phonetic transcription, the U has its own power to start a new syllable. So a little bit of a difference here with the I and the O. It's the I that has an accent mark. It doesn't start the next syllable, but you can see it has enough force to stand on its own. Same thing here, the U can stand on its own, but it's starting the next syllable. Okay, 6 días. E-I, E-I, A. We have a strong vowel, A, and a weak vowel together. So that's a criteria for forming a diphthong. Do we have an accent mark over the I? We do not. So since the I doesn't have an accent mark to give it its own power, its own strength, then it stays together as a diphthong, just like you learned in the previous slide. So this is just one syllable, 6. But in the next word, the I and the A go together. That should be a diphthong. The I is a weak vowel, the A is a strong vowel, but we don't want to say días. Try that one, that one's fun. Say it in one syllable, días. That's ridiculous. We want días. So in order to be able to divide the I from the A, we give it its own syllable. In writing, we give it the accent mark. Agua fría. In agua, the U-A, they form a diphthong because you've got a weak vowel and a strong vowel right there. Weak vowel U, strong vowel A. Fría, you also have a weak vowel, E, and a strong vowel, but you don't want them to be a diphthong. So in order to break up that diphthong, in writing you do it with an accent mark, in Spanish you do it by separating the two vowels into separate syllables. So you've got frí, separate from A. So agua is only 2 syllables, agua, and fría is 2 syllables, fría.